swear to state your name and address.
Anthony Robinson, 107 Marion Drive.
Thank you.
My concern, which was the fact that the mall is a two-level mall, and there's a flight of stairs that connects the two levels. And I don't know if this is something involved with the American Disabilities Act, that there should be an elevator or an escalator of some sort to make it, accessible to handicapped people.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you. Anybody on the board care to present with them? Looking left and right, I see none. Thank you so much for your testimony, sir. Anyone else from the public care to offer testimony tonight? Mr. Malanga. Don't forget the time limit.
Ms. Malak, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And you state your name again and address.
Kevin Malanga, Ridge Road.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Thank you for your careful attention to this application over so many meetings. We're all very grateful. I know that there has been some moments of tension. Everyone's worked through it, and we're all very grateful for the professionalism that is all manifested. Under the West Orange zoning law, drive-through windows are not a permitted use at the Essex Green Shopping Center. As you know, the township is required to conduct a master plan re-examination every 10 years. I think it may have been every 6 years in the past, but I believe it's every 10 years now. And each time the master plan has been re-examined, it has never been proposed that the drive-through windows be made a permitted use. Why are drive-throughs a bad thing? Idling vehicles exacerbate air pollution. There's also the noise, litter, the distracted driving at the drive-through themselves, and they take away business from sit-down restaurants. Dozens of communities throughout the U.S. and Canada have banned new drive-through fast food establishments. That's something to take note of. But let's also look at the legal aspect of this application for a variance for drive-throughs. Courts have interpreted the land use law showing that it's a decided preference that land use be done by ordinance rather than by variance. Courts have viewed zoning to be the purview of elected officials that decided town zoning, and zoning is intended to be viewed from a macro perspective, not just by a lot-by-lot perspective. Zoning laws strive to provide consistency and predictability in municipal planning. Most importantly, according to the New Jersey Supreme Court, only exceptional cases warrant a use variance. As a result, the law requires that use variances be supported by special reasons why the variance should be granted, and the burden of proof is on the applicant. I'm sure you've all read the planner's report, and the planner attempts to set forth those special reasons, but if you look at them, I think you'll see that those really are not quite substantial. A first objective of the land use law is to guide appropriate use or development of lands in a manner that will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. I can't say, nor would the planner say, how a drive-through does that. Another objective is to provide adequate light, air, and open space. Surely a drive-through does not do that. The third objective of the law is to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses and open space to meet the needs of New Jersey citizens. How does a drive-through do any of that? Another objective is to encourage the location and design of transportation routes which promote the free flow of traffic while discouraging the location of such facilities that result in congestion or blight. What could provide more congestion but a drive-through in a crowded shopping center? Lastly, there is the goal to promote a desirable visual environment and innovative design techniques. I think you would all agree that a drive-through doesn't do that at all. Planning drive-throughs advance none of these goals of the land use law. Drive-throughs add to pollution, add to congestion, and quite simply, our not a desirable feature was to be a town center design shopping center. One of our concerns is this mall has not shown the necessary sensitivity to the needs of the community. It hasn't really been an environmentally sensitive project. There's nothing green about this project. If a tenant wants to pay for it, it will be green. But the landlord itself is not offering any sustainability features to this project. And we understand perhaps that's not within your purview to control what a landlord wants to do. But I think it's the sense of the community that the use variances for a drive-through, 2 drive-throughs actually, that are not environmentally friendly. They are not sustainable in a positive way. Should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malina. Any members of the board with questions for Mr. Malina? Seeing none, you can resume your seat. Lady in the back on the right.
I need to swear you in. Hold on, let me swear you in first.
Okay.
May I hold the screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Not yet, though. Yes, ma'am. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name and address.
My name is Lisa Burton, B-R-I-T-T-A-N, and I'm from Berlin Terrace, B-U-R-L-E-T-T.
Thank you.
Can I hand these out?
Not yet.
Not
Just
yet?
tell me what they are.
What do you want to start with?
It's for members of the board to look at what I
No,
will
they
say.
look at it. Let our legal counsel look at it first.
Are these prepared by you?
These are prepared by me, and they're just examples of suggestions, and they pertain to my statement of landscaping.
Just one second, Ms. Britton, because counsel for the applicant has to look at them.
Okay.
Are the drawings prepared by you?
No,
No.
they're source material. Just, you can get them off the internet. Those are,
The applicant's drawings.
but just
Marked up by you.
marked up.
Okay. The applicant has no objection, and she'll tell us where she got these, and she has, the applicant's drawings marked up.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, these are being marked for identification. They're not in evidence yet. Give them such weight as would be appropriate based upon the level of authentication we receive.
This is public 3,
Four.
With that, yes.
and public 4 is 1, 2,
Are you giving us multiple copies or just one copy to share with you?
If you could just pass them along, I only made a few.
public 4 is 8 pages.
We're supposed to present enough copies for the board to look at.
I'm sorry, would you like mine? That's
No,
the next one.
you need to look at yours in order to testify.
Well, I know what's on it, so.
We'll share with the market. Let board get it now.
So those come a little later in the statement, so I can start with this, which everybody can see. So this site map is marked up to show in red possible driving routes at Essex Green. The network of red lines shows both main routes and possible shortcuts across parking lots, as you can see. Islands and walkways are marked in pale blue. In Clarion's plan, pedestrians will have only one protected raised walkway between building G and building A. Here. Otherwise, pedestrians must walk amongst the cars. This red network shows only some of the infinite possibilities for shortcuts in parking lots that are designed in this way. where the only limitation is to avoid parked cars. The existing parking lot is not compliant, but Clarion's is no improvement. By adding buildings and drive-throughs, they are reducing parking spaces while adding traffic and therefore increasing risky interaction between cars and pedestrians, while reducing the area of the existing islands and walkways. The second site map.
I'm not marking these large maps because these both contain your little packet, correct?
They are.
Okay.
Yes.
Correct.
The second site map shows in green the existing large islands and raised walkways that Clarion wants to demolish. This plan increases danger to the public, this one. It does not promote public well-being. It is not a public benefit. Marked in dark blue are the added public spaces Clarion proposes. These here. These constitute very minimal improvements in return for the added bulk of new buildings, more traffic and resulting pollution, especially from drive-throughs, and increased pedestrian jeopardy. In these hearings, the public has continually advocated for safer raised walkways, such as the first page on your handout. In which parked cars and pedestrians are shaded by trees, who as an added bonus give us the pleasure of our changing seasons, and for activated sidewalks along the facades of buildings that have zones for pedestrians as well as dining, punctuated by trees and plantings, and that have protective buffers between people and cars, such as those examples in these images. The handouts show examples of what the community would like to see at Essex Green, removing at least some of the road that circulates the traffic between buildings A and B. So this road over here. And turning that road into pedestrian-friendly promenade would encourage our community to actually linger, frequent the stores and restaurants, and create an environment for a thriving town center. A creative, environmentally sound solution benefits us all, owners, developers, businesses, and the community. When upgrading our town planning, we want to live up to our complete street resolution and our master plan. We want to encourage people to walk and to gather in the public spaces. We would like to see Clarion consult the EPA's green parking lot resource guide. We want to implement sound environmental practices and preserve and promote green spaces. We would like to see bioswales integrated into raised walkways, as shown on page 6 of the handout. Clarion is well aware of sustainability issues, but evidently, Clarion have decided West Orange is not deserving enough to apply their sustainability policies here. I urge them to go back to the drawing board and to deliver the community more of what we've requested in return for any zoning variances. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Britton. Any members of the board with questions for Ms. Britton? Left, right? Thank you so much. You may resume your seat. Anyone else care to testify tonight? Yes. Lady on the left.
I swear affirm testimony about you this evening that the truth is the truth, and nothing but the truth like that. Please state your name and address for the record.
Rosary Correll, you already know it.
Need it on the record.
I mentioned this in previous meetings that I'm a self-appointed senior citizens advocate. As such, I feel there are some issues I need to address which concern our seniors. I do support the upgrading of the mall, but I also share the many concerns and constructive comments made by those who spoke at previous meetings and again tonight, and most of them are very valid. My focus is that West Orange has to become a senior-friendly community so that seniors can age in place. In order to do so, West Orange has to become a livable community that promotes health, safety, and sustains economic growth. It must help residents stay connected and engaged as they age. In 2016, South Orange Maplewood, combined called SOMA, performed a survey of their seniors and found some very interesting results. They put together an action plan to address all the findings. Princeton and New Jersey had done this previously. Their action plan laid out 8 domains of livability, one which was identified as extremely important for outdoor spaces and buildings. People need public places to gather, indoors and out. Green spaces, safe streets, sidewalks, outdoor seating, and accessible buildings which can be used and enjoyed by people of all ages, and adequate lighting. What I would suggest tonight, and which was strongly supported by all 48 seniors who were present at a Pleasantville senior meeting yesterday, plus some other folks that I had spoken to, all seniors, is that the developer should provide in the design some grass areas under shade trees with benches, chairs, and small tables so they can sit. You know we have no senior community buildings, so this is a good issue to be considered for seniors. Under the shade trees, if these trees will make shade, with benches, chairs, and small tables so they can sit, relax, socialize, engage in conversation, play chess, checkers, cards, relax, and eat lunch that they purchased at any of the stores or restaurants in the mall. Or even go into the restaurants to dine. This is where economics come in. This would be a win-win situation for businesses and senior citizens. Some seniors have been to places where many strip malls include this kind of area so that seniors can congregate outdoors. In West Orange, because of living in, well, the temperatures change for the 4 seasons, it would only be 3 seasons, but it would be a way for seniors to socialize, be outdoors, and a place to congregate because we have nowhere else to go. We think this is not a costly thing for the developer to provide for the seniors, but we'll leave that up to your judgment. Listening to all of these very intelligent, very well-versed people tonight, I'm confused. I don't know how long Clarion has had that property, but obviously they weren't doing any maintenance on these trees if there are so many dead ones. Well, can we trust them to maintain these trees when they plant all the new ones? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Correll. Any members of the board with questions for Ms. Correll? You can resume your seat, thank you.
I can sit?
Please. Anyone else care to testify? I see a hand up on the right-hand side. Thank you.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
My name is Carol Schlitt, S-C-H-L-I-T-T. I live at 10 Overlook Avenue, West Orange. I've lived there for almost 20 years, and I've been asked by my neighbor, Gary Van Wyck, to read a statement that he prepared.
I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, Gary...
That's not permitted. Mr. Van Wyck has to be here in order to give testimony. If you want to testify on your own, you're more than welcome to do
I
that.
will testify on my own.
But this will be your sworn testimony.
That's fine. I, like Gary, like so many of my neighbors here, want to see Essex Green rejuvenated, and we want to see it succeed. But that does not mean that we should approve applicants' variances to our ordinances. Ordinances are in place for good reasons, and they should not be lightly overturned. To uphold our laws and the community standards, we have delegated the legal responsibility to you. to our zoning board. And the New Jersey law puts the legal onus on the applicant to prove why the variances should be granted. Proof requires that the applicant not only give their own opinions, but they need to give the law, and that they qualify for the criteria in the municipal land use law. And the law clearly states that opinions are not enough. They need to prove their case. If this zoning board's decision is legally faulty, we risk a lawsuit that taxpayers must pay for in order to have a judge properly apply the law. I want to focus on the D variances, particularly those for the two drive-throughs that have been discussed already, and also the height allowances. 5 votes on this board have to be in favor. The New Jersey case law states that the D variances can be allowed in only exceptional cases. Exceptional cases have to be proven to the zoning board, and that should not entertain these variances unless they can be proven. That if they can't be, you have to deny them. The board attorney didn't raise this issue, and we in the public are raising this issue, that they need to prove their case. Exceptional cases may be granted in only the case where they both have proved positive criteria and proven negative criteria. Negative criteria has 2 prongs. One prong is that the use shall not be substantially detrimental to the public good. And the other prong is that the use shall not substantially impair the intent and the purpose of the zoning ordinances and the zoning plan. Our zoning regulations do not permit drive-throughs in this planned commercial zoning district. Furthermore, every revision of our master plan has confirmed this. Therefore, to allow a variance application to override the zoning substantially undermines the zoning ordinance and the master plan, and it therefore contravenes the law, and this should be sufficient to deny their application. There have been 2 New Jersey decisions, recent one in 2017, which is Coaches against Wellington, and then a 1987 case of Medici versus BPR. They stated that an enhanced quality of proof is required to show that the variance is inconsistent with the master plan or the zoning ordinance. The zoning board is required to make a specific finding to that effect. The New Jersey Appellant Division has clearly stated that the zoning board cannot use a variance hearing to usurp the legislative power of the municipality to amend the zoning plan.
Ms. Lynn? excuse me,
Yes,
you have
I'm
two
just
more-
going to finish, this is the last paragraph.
I'm just alerting you in 2
Yeah.
more minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Furthermore, the D1 variance for drive-throughs is detrimental to the public good. It will increase traffic. More traffic, more risks to pedestrians, especially when it's combined with an inadequate design. More traffic means more pollution. And under the holding in a recent case, the negative criterion of being detrimental to the public health, public good, applies especially to the neighboring properties, the properties that surround Essex Green. The proposed structures will reduce open space, they'll reduce light, and they'll reduce air. And that is also detrimental to the public good. Obviously, the geographic center of our town, or any town, it's not an appropriate or desirable location for drive-throughs. Thus, even if the board believes that the applicant has proven their positive criterion, they have not actually proven the negative criterion. And based on that alone, their application should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Members of the board, any questions for Ms. Wood? Seeing none, anyone else care to testify? Ms. White, if you limit.
Valerie Orlando Ridge Road. I too want this shopping center to succeed.
Excuse me, please pay attention.
The proposed plan, touted by the planner's report as a town center design, but revealed through this process to be marketing talk, is the outcome of a vision that opposes and undermines West Orange's own master plan, which uses the word sustainability 70 times and the word pedestrian 36 times. This plan is automobile-centered. It is a great destruction project that leaps the center backwards, doubling down on the discomforts that shoppers experience that keep them home. The parking lot is the de facto entrance to the shopping center. It is what people experience first. It is and will remain a place where pedestrians are defensive from the moment they step out of their car. That is pointed out in the drawing that we saw presented by Lisa Britton. All those red lines were every which way that a pedestrian could be killed in this mall. Our foresters testified there will be no shade for 5 to 10 years, and a one-way sidewalk with mature trees in the parking lot is illogically to be removed to be replaced with parking. Building G, with its fast food drive-through, particularly concerns me. It is massive for the site. It dwarfs the TGIF and the bank nearby. It is the center of pedestrian auto and truck conflict. It requires a C variance in setbacks and in building coverage and a D variance for drive-throughs, which is not to be taken lightly. On one side, it faces a retaining wall, eliminating a portion of that nice natural slope. In violation of the C variance, its massive size and position along the roadway destroys the light and air and space that the planner claims in his report to create. I urge a no vote on these C and D variances for coverage, setback, and drive-throughs. I urge that you require building G to be smaller and as well as eliminate the drive-through. I request that building I by the AMC Theater not be considered at all, and that the applicant go back to the drawing board on that one. It's too crowded. They're requesting excessive signage throughout. A resident pointed out that the successful Short Hills Mall does not use excessive signage. I urge adherence to our signs ordinance and no C variance be granted for excessive signs. The applicant believes that exposing the stores to traffic by cutting trees and eliminating the de-acceleration lane will bring customers. We are the customers, and we're stating that we're not comfortable with this plan, which is confirmed in this study. It's called Strip Mall, City Trees, and Community Values by Kathleen Wolf, published in Arboriculture and Urban Forestry. And it says that consumers report being willing to pay 9 to 12% more for goods and services in districts having a mature tree canopy. Shoppers indicate they will travel greater distance and a longer time to visit a district having high-quality trees and spend more time there once they arrive. The application is also in violation of the tree ordinance, where we demand innovative design and grading to promote the protection of existing trees and prevent uncontrolled and excessive removal of trees. There will be no bioswales as requested by the township sustainability checklist, so the parking lot will continue to send polluted water directly to the Rollway River. They are unwilling to install even a plant wall. I'm sorry, I forgot to give out my handout. Ms. Bird, this is a photograph of the plant wall on the side of the Prudential building on Broad Street in Newark. It's a simple, oh, sorry.
Hold on a second.
Public,
Mr. Reagan, any objection? Public 5? And that's is it a photograph of the plant wall, Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Thank you. One for everybody.
So they are unwilling to install even a plant wall, a simple and effective device to beautify an ugly wall, particularly by the AMC Theater. If this is approved, despite all these arguments against it, then we as a community are working against ourselves and our planners in counteracting our own exertions and having created a progressive master plan.
Ms. Malonga, you have 2 more minutes.
Yep. Such a town center, if designed to be tree and pedestrian friendly instead of auto-centric, could become the new heart of West Orange. It would be profitable and a destination for consumers, not just for a fast cup of coffee and speed away, and to stay, relax, shop, eat, and return. Surprisingly, this applicant is not responding to its own consumers. So I'm asking you to be our voice, guiding them to a profitable, modern, sustainable center that respects our town's master plan. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Ms. Malonga. By a show of hands, how many more people wish to speak tonight? Let me see. Okay, the people whose hands are up are the only people who will be allowed to speak going forward. Sir, come forward, please. Yes? Nobody's coming.
raise your hand, please. Do you swear from the testimony about to give this evening be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your name, sir?
I'm Louis Dorff. I live at Hepworth Court
Spell
in
your
West Orange.
last name?
Dorff, D-O-R-F, as in Frank.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
That's okay.
the address is what?
Number 4, Hepworth Court.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Mr. Dorff.
Thank you.
Please present your testimony.
First of all, I want to start off by thanking the Zoning Board and Clarion for responding to one of the things that I emphasized in my last appearance up here. Has to do with the massive 48-foot high sign that was originally proposed as a invitation to visit the mall to everybody passing by on Route 28, and I used the graphic, I used my own analogy of a basketball court being basically twice that size, meaning that it would be the size of a half basketball court in height. So it's nice to know that that was rejected and reduced to 16 foot. It's gone completely. Okay, it's even better. I was delighted to find out that that was responded to in what should be a positive way. As brief background, I spent the better part of the last 2 years as a board member, as a trustee of the Downtown Alliance for Redevelopment. So please understand that this is, my comments are based on a certain amount of knowledge of the progress or lack thereof in building in improving the downtown to become a walkable town center. Quite honestly, I resigned recently from my position on the board because I was completely frustrated with the lack of focus on improving, on making things better. quite honestly, I feel that the DWOA is not an effective mechanism for a board. I think they just spend a lot of money and run around in circles. Personal opinion. And they also did a terrible disservice to the one person who really had a tremendous amount of knowledge, and that's Mr. Even, who was also a trustee on the board for many years. I honestly don't believe that the downtown is ever going to be the focal point or a town center where people can gather. It's just not laid out geographically in a way that you can easily walk, negotiate. Parking is a nightmare, and hopefully the Edison Village will be successful, but as you can see by all the vacant storefronts, no retailers or restaurateurs are rushing in any way to fill those spaces. Eventually, I assume that they will be filled. But that's probably only a matter of them finally reducing the rents to a palatable level. I believe that the main points that I'm trying to make here is that Essex,
Excuse me, please give the gentleman the courtesy of not interrupting his presentation by talking. If you need to talk, please walk outside.
I live approximately 1 mile from the Essex Green, and I walk it occasionally. And I honestly feel very strongly that Essex Green's success is the last chance that we have as a town of 47,000 people to have a viable gathering place for the West Orange population. I happen to be one of the people that likes Starbucks, but it's not because the coffee is better than Dunkin' Donuts. It's because it's a place to go that's civilized, comfortable, and a good place to hang out and interact with other people, or even to sit comfortably in a chair or at a table, do your work, and be among other human beings. There's not a place really, since we do not have a Starbucks in the town of 47,000 people in West Orange, I honestly believe that Essex Green is our last best chance of having a venue where people will go and congregate, get to know each other, and improve the state of our town. If it's not an inviting town center with an environment that people want to come and gather and interact with other people in West Orange, it's going to be economically less desirable for Clarion. Clarion will not have anywhere near the success unless they turn it into a viable town center that becomes a magnet for West Orange residents.
Thank you so very much. Any members of the board with questions for Mr. Dwyer? Who else would like to testify tonight? I think there should be 1 or 2 more hands. Okay, woman on the aisle, a few rows back. And then it looks like we have 1 more.
Oh,
One more. Well, you gotta get your hands up when I ask for a show.
we did.
Word.
We had already.
Swear from testimony about the proceeding which is truthful,
I do.
Thank you. Say your name and address.
Joyce Rudin, Woodland Avenue,
Rudin is
R-U-D-I-N.
Thank you.
Good evening.
I'm sorry.
West Orange is far more than a merchandising center. Our town has a history, a character, and a deep heritage. Our places should tell a story. The beautiful places like Eagle Rock and South Mountain reservations were designed to highlight the natural beauty of our community. They were designed with intent by Frederick Olmsted, the same visionary architect who created America's great vistas, including Central Park and the Niagara Falls Reservation. The historic Edison Laboratory and Edison residence, Glenmont, are also known treasures and national draws. Most people don't know that Glenmont is located in Llewellyn Park, which was America's first planned community. Yet visitors who come to these sites generally leave West Orange to shop and dine in more charming neighborhood locations. West Orange deserves beautiful spaces that reflect our township's unique character. We do not need a cookie-cutter strip mall, especially when neighboring Montclair, Maplewood, and Milburn all boast charming, walkable shopping and dining centers. We deserve the same accessibility and cachet other townships have sought to achieve in designing commercial spaces that highlight nature, multi-generational appeal, community gathering, and more. The designers of this mall also need to keep in mind that in the age of buying online, the role and function of commercial space is changing and evolving. Modern spaces in towns reflect different ways of conducting businesses, including more than just stores. Performance spaces and venues as varied as yoga and fitness studios, art galleries and workshops, small restaurants and even entertainment spaces like escape rooms and children's play areas, a fountain where people can gather, a stage for performances and live music that can bring the community together. This is the definition of a true town center, not just chains owned by international conglomerates. The developers of this property are going before this board seeking variances for drive-throughs, which increase greenhouse gases and raise pedestrian safety concerns. Mall owners love drive-throughs because they drive in traffic and profit, but only for that specific business. Restaurants often close early and keep the drive-through open 24 hours, leaving our township with few controls over hours, noise levels, and security. It makes the mall less walkable and less safe. Permitting drive-throughs drives us in the wrong direction. As was mentioned by Mr. Malenga, municipalities across the United States and Canada concerned about sustainability and the visual impact in urban design ban these drive-throughs. We should too. Although Clarion Partners boasts of continued investment in sustainability, in this project, they have failed to enact even the basics in green architecture, which include conservation of natural resources, reduction in environmental damage, increasing the energy efficiency of the building, and improving air quality inside and outside of the building. As recently as last week, their spokesman told the West Orange Patch that they were, quote, evaluating socially responsible investing in solar panels, electric vehicle charging stations, and landscaping. But the plans before you show none of this. And if it is not in their plans, it's not going to happen. No rooftop gardens are going to appear where none are promised in their plans or in their budget. No recycling plans. The only natural ventilation promised are the windows open at the drive-throughs, passing out the fast food. Clarion Brothers knows how to create sustainable projects. They know how to install solar panels. Their tenant, Amazon, has solar panels on the roof of 5 Clarion properties. 6 of Clarion's properties have LEED certification. We should be thankful that Clarion is the new owner of Essex Green and is qualified to make such improvements, but they are choosing not to and putting profits before people. The first view of the new Essex Green should not be an enormous parking lot devoid of green. We can attract buyers and consumers by offering a more aesthetic, human-centered, and not car-centered appearance. We can build a town center that reflects West Orange's character, a character that is diverse, engaged, and dynamic. A town center should be inspiring, relaxing, and profitable. It should be surrounded by authentic nature, not choked by stunted trees shoved into tiny islands surrounded by concrete. Imagination, sensitivity, and dialogue are what is needed to create a fantastic Essex Green, not an Essex Gray. I urge you to deny these variances and let
integrated in Clarion assets to improve the tenant and community experience. As a customer, I'd like a pleasant, safe shopping experience And I'd like to see if the management office exists and have signage so the customers who need assistance on someplace to go. I'd like to see Clarion institute smoking regulations throughout the entire outdoor area because I'm affected by secondhand smoke and I won't be able to enjoy shopping there if they didn't do anything and maybe they want to consider working with the West Orange Health Department. I'd like to see a private security force that should exist to promote a secure feeling for customers. They should keep the police substation. And I also would like to see them do something about installing a curb ramp crosswalk at Ruby Circle and Executive Drive to serve the current Executive Drive employees who work in the office buildings. I'd like to see some idling ordinance signage that tell people that we have a idling ordinance in the township in the city for 3 minutes. And I'd like to see concrete sidewalks put in the parking lot instead of crosswalks to give pedestrians better visibility. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. How many more people wish to speak? Let me see. I have 2 hands. Okay. Why don't you both come up to the front, sit here, and we'll do one at a time. You go first.
Good evening, Brian. Would you raise your right hand and do you swear from the testimony about to give you the truth, the whole truth?
I do.
The truth. Thank you. State your name and address for the record.
Sangeeta Badlani,
Thank you.
22 Florence Place.
Proceed.
Okay, thank you. I do want to thank Mr. Fowler for spending some time with us one weekend to go over Essex Green and just to look at some of the traffic patterns that are going to be changing. I have a foundation and we advocate for traffic safety. Looking for a state where pedestrians, bicyclists, drivers coexist together. I'm a little concerned about the lack of sidewalks that we're seeing right now. And I've been hearing throughout this process and also when we were talking to Mr. Powell that there will be sidewalks coming sometime in the future or at some point when we have some other construction that's completed by others. Again, we don't know when that's going to happen. We know that this Essex Green is going to be done at some time. And so we need to ensure that we care about and make it safer for the pedestrians. So my son was killed in a car crash in 2011 in South Orange. And South Orange was reactive. We have a fatality on Marion and Ruby, and we are again doing not much about it. And we're going to be reactive. How do we prevent tragedies like these? Can we not be proactive about some of these? And I just want to also give you guys some evidence of what the numbers are. There was actually a study that was done, I think the town council approved it, and it was done by Higher Group and Associates, and they said that Essex Green accounts for 50% of all pedestrian crashes. That's a high number. Nationwide, I'm giving you nationwide, there are almost over 50,000 crashes that result in 500 deaths and 60,000 injuries in parking lots and garages. And right now, we're not seeing any sidewalks in the parking lots. So how are we going to see people walking to the storefront with no parking lots? We, as the foundation, host a traffic safety event every September, and we're trying to raise awareness of these issues. We are the only town in the state of New Jersey who's doing that. And we need to become role model for other towns in New Jersey. So I urge Zoning Board to take this into consideration and take everything into consideration when we pass these plans. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our last citizen who is going to be testifying this evening.
to remember the name?
I do.
Thank you, please state your name and address.
Alana Amaya, ALANAAMAYA, 12 Helen Avenue. So I'm going to read something from the Environmental Protection Agency Green Parking Lot Resource Guide. I have so many concerns about this, and like most young moms, I have so much on my plate that I don't even have time to be here, but I'm here. But I'm just going to read a little bit about the environmental impact of parking lots, if you will. Most parking lots are made of pavement, a combination of asphalt, concrete, the most widely used paving material in the U.S., and aggregates such as sand, gravel, or crushed stone. Pavement is an impervious, heat-absorbing material that collects stormwater on the surface and doesn't allow it to filter into the soil, inhibiting the natural water cycle. With this in mind, parking lots have traditionally been built with the primary goal of channeling stormwater into receiving the water body as quickly as possible via means such as gutters, drains, and pipes. As a result, the runoff that is contaminated with many types of petroleum residues, fertilizers, pesticides, and other pollutants from parking surfaces enters the receiving waters at an unnaturally high rate, negatively impacting the surrounding ecosystem. Therefore, parking lots degrade water quality, strain stormwater management systems, consume large amounts of land and resources, and enable urban sprawl. Furthermore, these materials used to construct the parking lots have a variety of impacts on the air, the water, the biodiversity throughout the life cycle. So with this being said, there is a solution that I'd like to have considered. On-site stormwater management. Innovative stormwater management strategies are increasingly being incorporated into the parking lot design as part of the overarching concept of low-impact development. LID stormwater techniques, also known as BMPs or best management practices, manage stormwater on site and reduce the negative impacts on receiving water and municipal stormwater management system, and decrease the need for costly infrastructure such as pipes, gutters, and curbs. If this is done on a small scale, the controls attempt to mimic the pre-development ecological and hydrological processes of an area and can reduce stormwater and site development, design, construction, and maintenance costs by 25 to 30% compared to conventional approaches. Unlike these traditional stormwater management systems designed only for efficiency and stormwater removal, which can lead to negative downstream effects, BMPs represent a shift towards a sustainable approach to stormwater management. Thus, in the context of parking lots, BMPs add value by minimizing the environmental impact of runoff and often lower site development costs while improving aesthetics. So, along with what so many people said tonight, this is just another consideration for, and I do urge you to vote no.
Thank you, Ms. Maya. That concludes the public hearing. That concludes the application. Before I open the floor to my fellow board members, I'd like to observe, what? Oh, Frank, you want to say anything? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I almost forgot you were here.
Try to be brief. Essex Green is an existing shopping center that's been serving the township for over 60 years.
You speak louder, please.
Microphone.
The last major renovation was 30 years ago. The existing center is approximately 330,000 square feet. The applicant's proposing approximately 50,000 additional square feet. That's an increase of about 15%. 75% occupied with major tenants. The redevelopment that's being proposed by Clarion will need to be undertaken while accommodating, the needs of those tenants and the customers that they serve. The retail market has changed, particularly over the last 10 years. Today, the many challenges to remain competitive with leasing and operating the shopping center include outdated layout of the center and buildings, size of the buildings and rentable space is not attractive to tenants, circulation, both vehicular and pedestrian, function poorly, poor visibility of the center from Prospect Avenue, great changes to the property. Clarion's goal is to redevelop, revitalize, and expand the shopping center in order to create a shopping experience that provides personal services, entertainment, and restaurants, along with retail and exciting, attractive atmosphere located at the center of the township. The goal is for it to be more pedestrian friendly, better connections within and outside the site, improve access and circulation, improve open spaces with more landscaping, in particular expanding the plaza, and other open areas. The applicants tried to incorporate the extensive comments, not only from the board and its professionals, but from the public, as revised the plans to address many of the recommendations of the township forester, the pedestrian safety committee. They've eliminated the tower sign, which was quite objectionable to a lot of folks. I do want to point out that there's actually an existing drive-through on the site at the bank that's existed for a number of years. With respect to trees, at the end of the construction of the site, there'll be 42 more trees than there currently are today, which is 110 more. Total will be 110 more than the ordinance requires. The amount of parking is at a limit of what is required to attract tenants, and the applicant cannot give up any more parking in order to remain competitive. Based on the application and the plans presented to the board, as they've been revised and supplemented, and the testimony presented by the applicant's professionals, including his professional planner, the applicant moves the board and grant the required variances if approval is requested. We appreciate all of your time and consideration. I know it's been a long haul.
Thank you, Mr. Rader. Anything else? So, now I declare the hearing is closed, subject to comments from my board members. However, I would be remiss if I didn't observe that this has been a highly contested application. I wish to commend both the applicant and the interested parties. Notice I never use the word objection. The interested parties, and you have rights under the statute, you also have rights as citizens of West Orange and other communities, because an interested party does not have to live in West Orange. We try to afford a balance so that we take into consideration the needs and desires and requirements of both the applicant and the interested parties. The interested parties have been professional and controllable in the sense of not going over the 10-minute limit. It was something I saw on TV yesterday, that there was a hearing out in California just the other night, and the testimony was being given by Brad Pitt. And he reached his time limit, and the chairperson said, Mr. Pitt, wind it up, and he immediately stopped talking. So I appreciate all of you honoring the 10-minute limit that we have. I'm also going to go out of my way to praise my fellow board members, because they've all worked very hard and very diligently with the enormous quantum of material that has been submitted to us, and agreeing with a little bit of arm twisting to stay past our 11 o'clock time limit. We usually stop promptly at 11, and two of our board members, Mr. Steinhardt and Schwartzbaum, had other places to be tonight that were important to them, and yet they're here to try to finish off this application. So, thank you all. It's time for commentary and discussion by members of the board. After you've made your presentation, there's not going to be any debate. Nobody's going to question each other on the board. You'll make your statements, state your opinions, and we go on to the next board member. And I think I'm starting on the right this time around, so Mr. Even, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No one wants a better town than myself. I've been working in this town for 43 years to make it better. There's two council people in the back, and there's a councilman over here in the front that said that know my record and know how I feel about this community that I've lived in and worked in, and done some actually nice architecture from time to time. I've I've given up doing architecture in this town to be on this board because I think it's necessary to be on this board, to have a professional on this board, despite two professionals sitting down there, one new, one old, not in age, and being active with the town. I wish the best for Essex Green, but I absolutely cannot support this application as it stands right now. I can't support it because many of the questions I asked were not answered. They're still not answered. All right? I still don't know where the stairway is going to be at the I building and the retaining wall. The only place for angled parking in the whole lot is up against the drive-through window aisle, which also has to offer loading docks, which are definitely in conflict with the drive-through window. Drive-through window opens up, despite everything everybody said about air and noise and idling. Most importantly, due to the safety committee, is the fact that when you pick up your hamburger or coffee or whatever is going to be in that driveway window, because the applicant hasn't told us what's going to actually be in any of these buildings, and you step on the gas and don't realize that there's an eating area right in front of the driveway window, someone is going to get hurt. There's no bollards there, no planters, no nothing. The bollards came from somebody on the council to the police chief. Police chief worked with the applicant. I appreciate the fact that the police chief did do that, but the layout of the bollards is not the best, and I made that comment again tonight. I talked almost from the beginning, because I've done numerous retail applications myself as an architect over the past 36 years. And I've talked about the fact that the parking islands are pinched, which do not allow for proper tree planting. In return, I had about 24 of those pinched areas. In return, I got a drawing here that shows that they're going to open up 4 of them. I almost think it's unbelievable that they even tried. I've actually used the old, the existing deceleration lane as an example for other shopping centers that I've worked in, because I thought it was the best idea that ever happened at one of the renovations, I think about 30 years ago, when they put the deceleration lane in. I think it's the safest way to get into that center is to turn right again, and slow down, just as you would slow down as you're exiting Garden State Parkway or the New Jersey Turnpike. I'm still very much concerned about the access road in front of the center, where to this day, local smaller delivery trucks line up and people drive up and park there to run in and get something quick at Panera, or get something, pick up a art thing at Jerry's Art Store, which is my favorite store in the mall. I have an account there. I send all my students there, and I send my people there, everybody that I know. I'm just really disappointed in a major shopping center developer who's done good work, and an architect, SBLN, who's done also good work in many centers, and that I've competed with even. I don't know the reason why they did what they did here. I just do not know the reason. They haven't explained themselves why they couldn't do what they've done in other centers. So my personal thing is that I'm going to have to vote no until I see my full plan.
Thank you, Mr. Pansel, although you don't vote, we vote for the comment.
Yeah, I understand. I appreciate everything that the applicant is doing in this property. They've been there forever. It's too
Please use the mic.
Sure.
Thank you.
This property needs some major updates. It's definitely in major decline. The first thing that I appreciated very much about this application was the actual fact that they are changing the entrance to the facility, because that wraparound makes me nuts going in there. And I think they've improved the traffic flow tremendously. With the traffic flow, they seem to have met with the pedestrian safety people and have done tremendous help there. And as it was testified, it was 99% of what they asked for, they're getting. You never get 100% of what you want. I asked for the lane to be dropped near Macy's backstage to go to ShopRite, but maybe that's too expensive, but at least they put or are going to put a guardrail in there, which will protect against any other cars falling through. There was a car that fell down there, so that's a plus as well in the public safety arena. They agreed to not put up this 48-foot sign, which is a benefit to the public. They don't want to be like Las Vegas out here. So that was one of the good things they did. One of the things that did concern me about the application was, again, my question about sustainability issues. They don't seem, I understand from a landlord's point of view, you don't want to put in sustainable things that are going to strictly benefit the tenant, which I guess would be the rooftop solar, which would be a great benefit, which they're not doing, or any solar in the parking areas, which would create shade area as well. If we're concerned about shade area, that certainly would go a long way to giving some shade in the parking lots, and it would also be a benefit for sustainability, sure. I talked about the sidewalks, I'm happy with that. And they've done their best to the tree ordinance, comply with the tree ordinance. And they're removing some and putting in as many as they can, dealing with a difficult sewer issue that we have with the property. So all in all, I think it's going to be a great improvement with the signage. It's going to really look a lot nicer than it is now. That's my comments.
Thank you. Mr. Redmine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one sort of point of order question before we before this moves to a vote, do we get to see a final plan and also the list of conditions that were attached to the plan?
The list of conditions will be discussed if there is a resolution adopted tonight. That'll be part of the resolution. The final plan is usually submitted either before the resolution is adopted at the next meeting or prior to the time that they obtain the construction permit.
So we don't see the full picture before voting?
You will get it before you vote, but you'll make it a condition that all of the conditions be shown on the final plan that has to be submitted before we vote on the resolution.
Okay, thank you. So I want to start by sort of talking about the standards that I think we should apply to this and all the applications that come before the board. I think that we should hold applicants to a very high standard. I think that an applicant should be required to demonstrate adherence to our town ordinances. I think we should require applicants to demonstrate consideration and implementation of the critical aspects of our master plan in our town. I think that document reflects the values that we hold as a community, and I think it's critical that applicants who come before the zoning board demonstrate that they have both fully considered and fully implemented all the aspects of the master plan that is possible. So with that said, in sitting here and listening to the recordings, reviewing transcripts, hearing testimony, and asking questions, my belief is that this applicant has demonstrated insufficient consideration of the master plan. and insufficient implementation of the critical aspects of the master plan. I don't see sufficient evidence of the benefit of the D variances that are being applied for. I think that the zoning board should be very careful in awarding particularly D variances that are applied for, because I believe that rather than awarding D variances, I think we should encourage our town to pass ordinances that allow elected officials to be held accountable for those ordinances in those positions. To sum up, I think that this plan should be better. I think that there are specific aspects that are described in the master plan and have been described by many of the residents who have spoken during the course of this hearing. I think that we as a town deserve better redevelopment standards, and I think that we should require applicants who come before this board to meet those standards. And for all those reasons, I'm going to have to vote no on this application.
Thank you, Mr. Whitmore.
I have to commend Mr. Regan and the applicant for everything that they have done to address the concerns of everyone that has come up to the podium and expressed those concerns. As previously noted, this is a shopping center that's been in existence for many, many years and has not been viable for the most part for quite a long time. I think this applicant has demonstrated a willingness to resurrect this particular area and make it as viable as possible, given the fact that it's existing. You can only do a certain amount of facelifting with existing buildings and parking lots and such. I think they've gone the extra mile to do whatever they possibly can. The experts were credible, in my opinion, very accommodating, not condescending at all, and any kind of information they imparted to us, and I would urge my fellow board members to vote in favor of this application. We sorely need this.
Thank you. Mrs. Forster?
Essex Green is a very dated shopping center. The applicant is seeking to improve the property with an enhanced shopping experience. The applicant seeks to add 2 additional buildings and 2 drive-throughs. This renovation will improve the overall appearance of the building's facade. The applicant needs to obtain zoning board approval due to C bulk variances and D variances. The C variances primarily relate to parking spaces and signage. The D1 use variance relates to the drive-through, and the D6 variance relates to the building height. The applicant has presented their plans over the past several months. The applicant has listened to the board's input and the public's input and has modified their plans accordingly. The applicant modified its landscaping plans, removed the large tower sign, and agreed to install a landscape barrier at the entrance of the site. The shopping center was built in 1957 and was last renovated in 1991. We all have to accept that the retail landscape has changed dramatically since the 1990s. This renovation will allow for space, for better use of the space for small businesses. It will promote our town, allowing for more restaurants and retail services. The traffic flow will be improved. Dead trees and shrubs will be replaced. There will be an improvement in regard to the overall appearance and visual landscape. For this application to receive my approval, I would require the following. 1, an approved snow removal plan be submitted. 2, a landscape and tree maintenance plan and bond be agreed to. 3, that the applicant agrees that the sign cycling time be in compliance with any future county ordinance that may come into effect. And 4, agree that the advertisement on this digital sign will advertise the stores in the shopping centers and not products, for example, solely a Nike shoe advertisement. I would encourage the applicant that when they start construction, that they try to replant and transplant any tree that they can on the site, though I will not make this a condition of approval. I acknowledge that there is a public sentiment that this property should have more pedestrian walkways and larger tree islands. We must remember that this is a shopping center. Our town is blessed with numerous parks and reservations. In regard to the parking variances, the applicant's professional testified and demonstrated that the proposed parking spaces are sufficient for the renovated site. In regard to the D variances, regarding the drive-throughs, while the current ordinances do not permit drive-throughs and thus require variance, this site is suited for drive-throughs. Drive-throughs are common in many land uses. The proposed master plan will permit drive-throughs. In addition, this D1 use variance has no substantial impact on the public good. In regard to the D6 variance, the current ordinance has a maximum height of 35 feet. The applicant has 3 buildings which will have a height of 40, 42, and 44.25 feet. These height variances will improve the overall visual effect of the site, and there will be no substantial impact on the public good. I encourage my fellow board members to vote in favor of the application with the conditions noted.
Thank you. Mr. Steinhardt?
Yes. Without repeating ad nauseum testimony and also the comments of especially Ms. Gabry, Mr. Quinzel, and Mr. Schwartzbaum, because I'm in significant agreement with everything they had said. One of the purposes of why we're here is balancing what is being applied for and what is called for under the zoning ordinance. I don't believe that any of the variances are so substantial as to classify them as rezoning by variance. I believe that all the variances are warranted. I listened closely to the planner's testimony in terms of all the requirements, the legal tests, and I'm very comfortable that the testimony was credible, well presented, well backed up, was not a net opinion, as I heard so many net opinions from the audience tonight. I like the others who I've quoted before, would encourage my board members, my fellow board members, to vote positively on this application. You can't get everything you want, and we're getting a lot more, much more than what we have, and I'm very satisfied with what I've seen.
Thank you, Mr. Steinhardt. Ms. Weiss?
I'm just going to say a few words, but mostly Irv has said everything that I was going to say regarding the variances. The D variance for a drive-through, I do not think will have a negative impact. I have 3 drive-through restaurants 5 blocks from my home. There has never been a problem. I think that it will promote restaurants, whether it's the ones that are existing or other restaurants to come. The height variance, that shopping center is set back very far, which can not make a substantial difference. I think I want to give the audience, I want to give you the most credit. You are very dedicated. Whether you don't like what we're going to say, you'll have to fight on to get what you would like. And I give you a lot of credit, and I respect, and I truly respect your wishes. But this not a park. We have the Toby Path Center, we have the South Mountain Reservation, we have places where seniors, people can walk and be outside. Is this perfect? No. Would I like a few more trees? Yes, and they can always do that. Would I like green and green? Yes. But this is not the place. It's the time now to move forward. The major sign that I objected to was taken away. This, someone said, and very, very eloquently, other communities, we are not Church Street in Montclair. This is a shopping center. We are not Maplewood Village. This is a shopping center. So I want to make the best of it. I think that people who are putting in millions and millions of dollars want to succeed. And if they find that this is not working and they need to make adjustments, maybe some of the things that board members have said and the public has said, they will do that. This is to be a success. We want them to succeed. And by the way, you don't just say, oh, go back and do the plans. We say yes, we say no. That's it. So I am going to say yes, and I thank the people in the audience. I thank my fellow board members, and I thank the applicant.
Thank you, Ms. West. I don't believe in being mysterious. I am going to urge my fellow board members to vote yes. That would make it a fifth affirmative vote, which would result in an approval. However, there are a number of statements that I need to place onto the record for the purposes of this application. We've had some wonderful presentations by some of our citizens regarding what the law is. Unfortunately, those are interpretations, not necessarily accurate statements. So let's look at the basics. We are a zoning board of adjustment. That's the full name of our body. We are a creature of statute and the ordinance in the Township of West Orange pursuant to that statute. And the reason that we have a zoning board of adjustment in addition to a planning board, well, why do you need two boards? Well, the zoning board of adjustment exists to adjust anomalies in our zoning ordinance and our master plan. That's where the name comes from, ladies and gentlemen. There is no single master plan and no single ordinance that can deal with every single piece of property in a community. So that where an owner of a piece of property is not getting the full protection that he or she or it is entitled to, or he believes it's entitled to, then they come before our board and they seek to have us adjust the ordinance by granting permission for certain approvals that they seek. I agree that one of the general tenets is that you don't zone by variance, you zone by ordinance. But that is inconsistent to a certain extent with what I just said. So there are occasions where variances are the most appropriate way of dealing with these anomalies in our ordinance. If you adopt an ordinance, a zoning ordinance amendment that applies to only one property, that's called spot zoning. And the court would throw it out. It would not be supportable. So tell me, let me tell you what we have here. We have two D variances, and there have been some nice statements about what the requirements are for D variance, but these are among the most benign D variances I have seen in my 42 years of practice. Generally, you get something like, let's build this shopping center in the middle of a residential zone where there are single-family residences. And they would seek a variance to do that. That's not what we have here. We have a height variance. Now, the only reason that the height variance requires a use variance under section D of the statute is because under the statute, if the height exceeds the highest allowable height in the zone by either 10 feet or 10%, then it's converted to a use variance. Here, our ordinance permits 35 feet, which means once you get to 3.5 feet, you need a D variance. In this case, we have a 5-foot variance, a 7-foot variance, and a 10-foot variance. Those are not huge variances. This is not, for example, and you never grant the variance based upon a variance you granted on another property. However, in terms of the impact on the community, you've got the LA Fitness sitting there at 60 feet, right next door, and at a higher elevation. This property is down, and so the impact of these minor variances of 5, Mr. Can you control yourself?
Me? Yeah, I'm controlled.
I don't think so.
That's your opinion.
5, 7, and 10 feet is minor. It's de minimis. The primary purpose for the statutory pronouncement that I just read to you was to draw a bright line determinant for whether the planning board or the zoning board gets the variance application. Here it came before this board. If the requested height variance, I said that this variance has nothing to do with the actual proposed use of the property. The 2 points that we have to consider is whether or not it's going to increase the density and whether or not it's going to have a negative impact on light and air concerns. There's not a density issue here because within that higher area, there's no additional square footage area. It's just the height with the same square footage, the same footage. So there's no impact on density. With respect to air and light, the testimony by the architect and the engineer are that there are no negative impacts in that respect, so that I see no distinction with regard to this height variance. The case in point is Grasso versus Spring Lake Heights at 375 New Jersey Superior 41, Appellate Division 2004. Mr. Moransky testified, and his opinion is not a net opinion. If you look at his report and you review his testimony, unlike many experts we get who simply say, I am an expert in this field and I think it's appropriate. No, what Mr. Moransky did was elucidate with regard to facts and findings that he has made and use those to bottom his opinion. So that I find his testimony not only to have been credible, but in accordance with the holdings of the cases of our courts that do not allow us to accept net opinions. There has been no countervailing expert testimony, and while that is normally the case where we have interested parties who have chosen to not hire experts, it's still what the record has in front, what the record places in front of us is undisputed testimony based upon facts with regard to the height variance. The second D variance is for the drive-through windows. This involves the allowance of a drive-through facility for the principal use. A drive-through is not a use. It's an accoutrement. It's an addition to another use. A drive-through facility doesn't sit in the middle of nowhere as a drive-through with nothing attached to it. It's actually the drive-through which is attached to the principal use of the property. Now, there have been some misstatements made with regard to the fact that drive-through windows are prohibited in this zone. Our ordinance states that any use which is not specifically permitted is deemed prohibited. And drive-through facilities are not permitted uses anywhere in the town. Not in this zone, not in any other zone in this municipality. Yet, you drive through town and you see many drive-through windows and facilities throughout the town. This board alone, in the past couple of years, approved 3 drive-throughs. One for the McDonald's, which had one, but it had to be reconfigured as a D variance. One for the Chase Bank, and one for the CVS. Not all of them. The McDonald's, of course, was fast food. CVS was a drugstore. Chase was a bank. There are a number of different types of principal uses to which drive-through facilities can be attached. As long ago as 1980, our appellate division, in an unreported decision entitled Geno's Incorporated versus the Board of Adjustment of the Borough of Paramus, appellate division docket number A2645-78, addressed the concept of a drive-through in an existing, a then existing Geno's restaurant. And after reviewing the facts of the case, which was simply to add this drive-through facility, the court said, in our view, and I'm quoting now from page 5 and 6 of the slip opinion, the insubstantiality of the proposed modification here is beyond debate. The appellate division held that adding a drive-through window is insubstantial. No change in the use is projected. Adding a drive-through window does not change the principal use of the property. Then they talk about the drive-through itself, and the court held whether such customers have to park their cars and enter the restaurant in order to make their purchases, or whether they may do so without leaving their cars, is not a difference constituting a change in the nature of the business itself, but merely reflects a modification of transactional mode, which in the land use sense and in this factual context is relatively inconsequential. So we're not dealing with the type of use variance where all of the special reasons have to be enunciated. Mr. Moransky, in his report, does a wonderful job of providing the factual basis for his conclusion that a drive-through facility can be approved, satisfying both the affirmative and the negative criteria. With regard to the C variances, I would also adopt Mr. Moransky's findings and conclusions because, again, they are not dead opinions. They were done appropriately. These are the subject of a well-reasoned analysis, as I said, not mere dead opinions. So once we have approval of the D variances and the C variances, we as a zoning board then have the obligation to review the site plan. So I'm going to recommend to my board members that we approve the 2 D variances and the list of C variances. And our legal counsel, our planner, and Mr. Regan have concurred on a list of the variances that are being required and requested. I'm not going to read all of them into the record. I'm going to submit to Ms. Byrne this list of variances, and it is my considered opinion that all of these variances have been established. The C variances have been established by the testimony submitted on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to offer a resolution, and when I do that, I'm going to address the question of conditions. However, that concludes my remarks, which are made part of the record and part of the findings of fact. I will now offer a resolution to approve the D variances, the C variances, and the site plan, subject to the following conditions. The installation of a guide rail on the Ruby Circle building wall at Building G. Items in the Bowen letter, which was on the record on October 18, 2018. The no-build area by the parking lot in front of Sears is to be removed. What's that? The loading docks. I'm sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, skip the next 2 on your list.
Skip the next 2?
Yeah, go to Jennifer Hedge.
Why are we skipping the next 2?
Or not.
The order of reading. We're going to require the applicant to have a maintenance bond for the landscaping for an extended period of 5 years rather than 2, which is normal.
Mr. Chairman, one of the points I wanted to make with regards to a maintenance bond, obviously the applicant is agreeing to the tree maintenance plan, which will include an obligation to replace any damaged or dead trees, if that was to be determined by the township.
Well, in light of the fact that this applicant has already purchased the property, and is unlike a lot of other applicants who come in on contingency, I think that that's appropriate. There's sufficient funds available. The juniper hedge is to remain. The tree removal permit has been not only updated, but has been approved by the township forester. There were numerous questions asked of him, and the conclusion he placed on the record tonight is that in his opinion, as the officer in charge of determining whether or not the tree removal ordinance is complied with by an applicant, is that this application complies with the ordinance. The applicant is to develop and draft a snow removal plan to the reasonable satisfaction of our engineer and Mr. Linson. That is to be submitted and approved prior to the issuance of a building permit or construction permit, as we call it. Okay. Yes, the applicant
But
will.
the applicant has agreed, let me amend that, the applicant has agreed to test the soil in the islands and replace as necessary.
Then that will be a condition in the resolution. Applicant will supply a tree maintenance plan as we just discussed.
About the snow removal.
I just did already.
Just said that, I didn't hear.
Fire official memo, applicant will comply with everything except number 3.
What's number 3, please, no?
I don't have it in front of me.
I don't know what it is.
Hold on.
That's like a quote.
I'd like to know.
What is it?
Yes.
I just said, hold on, I'm gonna see if, I'm pretty sure I have the fire official memo.
I have it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, read it into the record, please.
While
No,
possible.
no, number 3, just read number 3.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading. While possible, not required, I recommend that all buildings on the site be outfitted with a full fire smoke protection system as defined by NFPA and by the New Jersey Municipal Construction Code. Should this building be equipped with a fire/smoke protection system